In 2012, a new simulator hits the market. A groundbreaking multiplayer virtual railroading experience that would change simulation as we know it.
CSX, J, dispatcher,
49, Amtrak 132 clear. Order 121,
In 2016, its second rendition hits the market, doing more of what was never thought possible. Nearly 10 years from when it all began, the third version of the simulator is released, and it needs no introduction. Let's all go and see what's in Runny version 3. The long-anticipated Run 8 version 3 is here, and boy do we have a lot to talk about. Version 3 is a complete overhaul from the previous version, and it brings us a ton of new interface changes, physics updates, and route changes. The routes have changed so much that they could each have their own review, but some of the major changes to the West Coast include the addition of crossovers in the San Bernardino sub, more double track on the Movavi, and the flyover at Truxton. On the East Coast, Georgia Pacific and Botswick got a major overhaul, and they look incredible. Heading over to Moselle, the Selkirk Terminal got some extensive upgrades. Not only do the mainline tracks run through the yard, but the hump got additional tracks, and the hump tracks were increased in length. Again, there are so many changes, I can't fit them all into this video, but you can explore them for yourself and find them as you traverse each route. Another addition to the sim is weather. Not only are these effects beautiful, but they will also affect the way your train handles, making trains even more of a challenge to run. The sim also received lighting and graphic updates. Headlights have a realistic glow to them, and the skies are so beautiful and full of color at dusk and dawn. It's almost as enjoyable just to be a rail fan as it is to actually run the trains. Along with all the new eye candy, Run 8's physics received a big overhaul. The air brakes feel a lot more real and do not grab the train instantly like they used to. Locomotives also feel more real in the way they pull. This is particularly noticeable with smaller engines like the GP40s. At the same time, larger road engines like ES44s and SD70s can actually stretch brake a train without coming to a complete stop after a first service brake application. Slack in the trains is also a lot more realistic. This also means if you're too rough with your train, you run the risk of breaking knuckles or derailing. Oh, that's right, I forgot to mention you can actually derail your train now. Derailments can be caused by multiple things, and they are all explained in the user guide. When you derail, you can either re-rail the Piglet way, or actually place down re-railers and lift the engine back onto the tracks. Another amazing new feature is the ability to have player-manned helpers. In version 3, you can actually have someone coupled to the rear of your train and shove you up the mountain grades of the West Coast. The initial setup can sometimes be a bit buggy, but when it works correctly, the experience is incredible. You've always been able to go back in time and experience how railroading was done in the past, but never in a way like this. This is hands down my favorite new feature.
U2 detector milepost 363.81.
Let's talk about our new locomotive, the GE C44-9W, or -9 as most people know them. The sounds on this model are a little underwhelming, however the detail on them is incredible. The cab is very nicely detailed, and all the switches on the back panel can be flipped. Sadly, not all of them have a function though. If you compare it to the original ES44s we had in Run 8 version 1, you can truly see how far Run 8 has come in their ability to make models. AI in version 3 has also received some pretty significant improvements. AI trains will actually dim their headlights when they pass you now, and sometimes, if you don't dim yours, they'll give you a nice bright flashback. Little details like this just make the sim feel so much more real. The biggest update to AI is that you can have them hump cars for you. You can learn how to set up AI by reading the Run 8 user guides. Once set up, they will shove to the hump and start sorting cars. Once they are done, they will stop and await orders. You do still have to keep an eye on them, as they will continue to hump onto tracks that are full. We also have a new form of AI, the Auto DS, or Otto. When Otto is active, there is an interface that allows you to communicate with him and request authority to occupy mains and get signals. It is amazing that the devs got this technology to work. It does take some initial setup to get Otto to route trains correctly. One thing I have noticed as well is that he's not as smart as a real dispatcher, especially when there are a lot of trains to run. Some users have also noted that when trying to get out of yards with high train counts on the main, it can be difficult. Otto seems like he's best for single player use and not as great for servers. Regardless of Otto's shortcomings, you can't deny that the technology is incredible, and just another amazing thing that comes with Run 8 version 3. Version 3 looks amazing, doesn't it? You're probably ready for me to give you my final thoughts and tell you to go buy it. Well, version 3 is not perfect, sadly, and it does have some issues. Just to name a few, there is some equipment that still has V1 couplers inside the detail V3 ones. The original well cars have issues with their containers both in size and type. For example, JB Hunt does not have a 40-foot container. They have always been this way since version 1, and they could definitely use an overhaul. The P42s have reverted back to their original speedometers that only go up to 80, which is an issue when Needles allows you to do 90 miles an hour and the Hudson line allows you to go 110 miles per hour. The biggest issue I have is the train maker upper. You no longer have the ability to move multiple cars at once. This can make customizing your train very, very difficult. The train maker upper is V3's biggest downfall. I'm also not a fan of the realistic indie braking. Your trailing engine should not take that long to apply and release their brakes. Thankfully, this feature can be turned off, but the apply and release of the independent in its entirety still feels a bit too slow. There are a few other minor issues other than these, but thankfully none of these issues are game-breaking, and you can still have an amazing experience and work around them. Out of all three versions, version 3 is definitely the most solid. In the end, you can look at V3 in two ways. You can be upset that we didn't get any new rolling stock except for a default -9 and no new routes, or you can see all the amazing new features and experiences that await you. I tend to go with the latter. I never thought that V3 would be this incredible. And who knows what amazing experiences await us in our future. Run 8 version 3 is definitely not perfect, but what it got right outshines those imperfections by miles. I'm going to follow in the footsteps of my inspiration for these videos, which is at the Railyard, and not give V3 a rating since it's an entire simulator and not a single piece of content. But I'm definitely going to say that if you don't pick up Run 8 version 3, then you're missing out. I'm not gonna lie, I had my doubts. But to John, Brad, Jason, Mikey, and the rest of the Run 8 team, my hat is off to all of you. You guys did one hell of a job.